Hello, everybody. Welcome to Monday. We'll get our Monday morning spiritual coffee by this Bhagavatam session. Now we got to the beginning of the fourth division, which is going back to the descendants of Manu and Shatarupa, which is kind of the end of the tale of how Brahma created things. Karen, I'll explain it again in this somewhere along the line here, maybe right now. So on Friday we heard that when you talk about the descendants of Manu and Shatarupa, you're talking about genealogies, which are traditionally pretty boring stuff. But it's extremely interesting due to the way that the children are named. Hello, everybody. It's extremely interesting because of the way the children are named. The relationship between children and parents, and children, brothers to brothers, sisters to sisters, etc., tells very interesting story or gives very important lessons about certain topics. So we heard about the 12 children. I guess they're sons. I don't know. The names sound pretty male. Yeah, the 12 sons of Akuti and Ruchi. The 12 sons. Well, 12 grandsons of Akuti and Ruchi. Akuti being inspiration or desire, and Ruchi, being desire. Inspiration and desire coming together. They had yagya and dakshina, which means expertise and effort. Good effort. So when you work with inspiration to fulfill your desires, inspiration and good effort, but you do the proper actions to fulfill your desires, then you get 12 successive results described by those 12 children. Now, the next thing, Maitreya, we're back to Maitreya. Maitreya is the storyteller at this point. The next thing Maitreya goes to is to talk about Devahuti and Kardama, who we just finished hearing about. We heard about them for dozens of chapters because they had Kapila as, I think, their 10th child. The one boy that they had. So he said, we already heard almost all there is to hear about Devahuti and her husband Kardama, but now we will hear about the children Devahuti's 9 daughters gave to the 9 spiritual sages. So maybe an easier way to say this would be, now we're going to hear about Devahuti's grandchildren. Okay, now for Karen, when we finished up talking about Kapila, she asked about who Asuri is. Because in the Sankhya schools, typically consider Asuri to be like their founding teacher, and then Panchashika to be his first student. And then they throw Kapila into there somewhere, either saying that Asuri is the disciple of Kapila, and or saying that Panchashika's mother is Kapila. So there is a way to there's a Kapila, which is feminine, so that would be Panchashika's mother. It's not the same person, just somebody named Kapila. Now, she said, but we didn't hear anything about Asuri in the story of Kapila talking to his mother Devahuti, which is true. However, in the first canto, the first division of the Bhagavatam, do you remember there was a list of 21 avatars? I think it was 21, maybe 23, 20-something avatars. And it was number 5 on the list is Kapila. In that verse that talks about Kapila, there one verse, it mentions Asuri. So Bhagavatam does also mention Asuri. So we have a couple of ways of fitting this in. Obviously, Asuri was not a part of the conversation at all. It was not mentioned as a part of the conversation between Devahuti and Kapila. Maybe other people were there and they weren't mentioned, but usually Bhagavatam mentions that. Kapila told his mother to teach and to spread Sankhya philosophy. But most of the modern Sankhya schools say that they come from Panchashika via Asuri, via Kapila. So none of the students were mentioned. Devahuti students weren't mentioned. Kapila students weren't mentioned. Maybe somebody found Kapila while he was walking to the ocean and got lessons. Maybe somebody was able to go see Kapila under the ocean somehow and was able to get lessons there somehow or another. Or maybe it's because this happens once in every kalpa, once in every cycle of 4 ages. Kapila will have an avatar. And they're not always exactly the same. Especially not in the cycle that we're in, because we're in a Krishna cycle, which is quite unusual. It's 1 out of 1,000 cycles. So things get to be different, slightly different in this particular cycle. So that's my answer there. Maybe Asuri was the primary student in most of the incarnations of Kapila, not in the one that's being described in the Bhagavatam. Or maybe he was just a different student. Whatever it is, Asuri's Sankhya and Kapila's explanation to Devahuti is different, because the Asuri Sankhya only considers the bit about Prakriti. It only talks about the 25 elements. It doesn't talk about yoga, bhakti, dharma, anything like that. It's just the empirical stuff. Okay? Hopefully that answers your question about who Asuri was. Now, let's see, who are Devahuti's grandchildren? Great. Devahuti's grandchildren. So she had 9 daughters. Kardama's daughter. First, we're going to hear about Kala. Kala got married to Marichi. Well, what does the name Devahuti mean? Devahuti means the one who summons divinity or invokes divinity. Hutam is to invoke. To call, like they actually call this, when they do ceremonies, they call them hutams, because you're invoking the gods. And Deva means God, divinity. So the invoker of divinity is Devahuti. She's named that because she's got the distinguishing characteristic of having given birth to Kapila, Vishnu. Okay, so now her daughter Kala, apparently maybe the first daughter, Radhe. Maybe, so her first daughter Kala married Marichi. Now, Marichi means a ray of light. And Kala means refinement, sophistication, expertise. So we're going to have the concept of Kala and Marichi's marriage means the concept of refining light. So let's see what their children are. They have a boy named, I could use some glasses, or? Yeah. They have a boy named Kashyapa. Kashyapa is very, 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 very important. Has he come into the story yet? Isn't he the father of Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha? I think so. Anyway, Kashyapa is very, very important, and he's one of the most expert progenitors. He creates life forms pretty amazingly. So the refinement of light produces Kashyapa. Kashyapa means a sun ray. And they had a girl named Purnima. which means moonlight or full moon. So they had the sun and the moon, but they named the children the sun and the moon. The father is light, and the mother is refinement, or creating things from refining, making something from something else. So she's making something from the light. So she produces the sun, Kashyapa, and Purnima, the moon. Kashyapa had many children. We will discuss this later. It's too many children to discuss right now. Purnima had 2 sons, named after 2 important qualities of light: Viraja and Vishvaga. Viraja means the illuminator. That's the primary quality of light. Raj means to be bright. A king is called Raj because they act like the sun. They give off light, and people get attracted to light, and they gather around light, etc. So the concept of king in Sanskrit through the word Raj means the brightest person, the most sun-like being. So Raj actually means to effuse, effulge, to give effulgence, to have light come off. That's the primary quality of light. So the daughter of Kala and Marichi, of the refining light, the moon, produces illumination, Viraj, and Vishvaga. Oh, that's interesting. Vishvaga means goes everywhere. Vishvagamana. So light spreads, boom, everywhere. Very fast. Now, I have an interesting note in here. I wonder, it's even amazing myself. I probably got it from a commentary or something. Kashyapa. The Viraj is more of a quality of sunlight, and Vishvaga is more of a quality of moonlight. Vishvaga has the moon has a very amazing quality that it can shine during the night. The sun is more powerful than the moon, but it can't shine at night. It can't get to the nighttime at all. The moon, although less powerful, less bright than the sun, has more ability to get everywhere. It can light up things at night also. So there's also the sun-moon dynamic here about light. Purnima also had a daughter named Devahuti, which means the divine river, who would become a divine river and wash Hari's feet. That's going to be Ganges River, Devahuti. That's interesting how the sun produces a river eventually. The light actually produces a river, but they say it's like it's a little bit off topic. All right, so that's interesting about light. If you make stuff out of light, kala means the creativity, the ability to refine things, make things, improve things. If you make things out of light, then you can make the sunlight and the moonlight. Kashyapa and Purnima. And Kashyapa will have a lot of children. Talk about that later. Purnima has 2, Viraj and Vishvaga, the ability to brighten things and the ability to go everywhere. Brightening things is like a sun quality, and going everywhere is like a moon quality. Now, other children. Kardama has another daughter named Anasuya, and she married Atri. This is very interesting. You'll hear about another avatar. No, kala is not about time. You just have to watch your vowels in Sanskrit because you're not probably too used to it, or even if you're Indian by birth, you're probably lazy about it. There's long vowels and short vowels, and they're totally different letters. The sound a and are as different as a letter Q and a letter T in English. They're completely different. I mean, they're not completely different. Obviously, they're related, but they're not the same word. Not necessarily the same word. So kala is time. Kala is a different word. Right. Kardama's daughter Anasuya and his wife Atri gave birth to 3 very famous sons. The word Atri, the name Atri is very strange. Tri means 3. So he has 3 famous sons. But his name is Atri, which means not 3. So this is an interesting story here. And the wife's name is Anasuya, which means having no hatred or having no envy or no animosity. So this is a weird word, Atri. It's hard to put it, give it an image in English right now. But let's look at the story, and it'll become very cool and interesting as to why they had what happened with their children. So they had 3 very famous sons: Divine Datta, an expansion of the super soul Vishnu, so like a avatar of Vishnu. Treya, 3. So divine Datta, unabiding Durvasa. Unabiding means impatient or unforgiving or very strict. Unabiding Durvasa, who is an expansion of Master Shiva, and nourishing Soma, an expansion of Brahma. 3. Atreya, or Atri, the one who's named not 3, had 3 kids, each one an expansion of one of the 3 primary divinities, Vishnu, Shiva, and Brahma. Datta, who's Vishnu, Durvasa, who's Shiva, and Soma, who's Brahma. Now, Vidura stops Maitreya at this point. And he says, this is interesting stuff. I want to hear this story. Don't just keep going on with the genealogy and the names and everything. Tell me the story that happened here. So you get a break in the genealogy. Vidura says, why did the 3 foremost gods, who are the cause of existence, beginnings, and endings, that's why there's 3, because there's these 3 aspects to time, desire to be born in 3-less Atri's family? So Vidura says, tell me the story. And he calls Maitreya his guru. His Guruji, why did the 3 foremost gods, the causes of existence, beginning, and endings, desire to be born in the 3-less Atri's family? And Maitreya explains. Now he's going to tell the story of why Atri got these 3 mega gods to become his kids. Maitreya explained that the most expansively learned Atri was impelled by Brahma to create offspring. That's Brahma's main concern in the beginning of the universe, is to get other people to help him make offspring. So he keeps asking people to make offspring. So he went with his wife to the great bald mountain named Riksha. They settled in a grove of ashok trees and palasha bushes laden with flowers, where the flowing waters of Nirvindya resounded. Here they practiced their disciplines. The scholar disciplined his thoughts by controlling his breathing for 100 years. You know, like when your yoga teacher makes you hold a pose for 30 seconds or something, too long. He practiced his asana for 100 years. How did he, with what asana? Standing on one leg. So he was doing his pranayama standing on one leg for 1 year. That was his yoga. That was his hatha yoga. He disciplined his thoughts by controlling his breathing for 100 years, standing on one leg without duality, literally, eating nothing but air, thinking, I take shelter of the master of everything. May he grant me children who are equal to himself. That was his mantra, his contemplation. That was what he was focusing his thoughts on. He was ordered by Brahma to make children, so he performed. He did his yagya. He did his effort the right way. His effort is, let me empower myself to be blessed by the master, some just vaguely named being, by the master, to give me children who are equal to him. His disciplined breathing. Yes, there is, Ms. Vinay. It's no duality. That's why he stands on one leg. Yes, that's right, Karen. His disciplined breathing seemed to ignite all three worlds as fuel. So this is a problem, is these yogis are so powerful. These superhuman yogis who do their asana for 100 years instead of, they have very extreme effects from their yoga. It starts to affect the planet, the world, etc. So his disciplined breathing seemed to ignite all three worlds as fuel, and the resulting fire of mental satisfaction flowed from his head. It became a topic of fame among the celestial nymphs, sages, musicians, divine serpents, and the masters and experts among divinities, many of whom came to Atri's ashram out of curiosity. The three masters noticed this and also came. So this is what happened is, this yogi standing on one leg, doing pranayama for 100 years, stuff starts to happen. Not eating, nothing. So stuff starts to happen. The oxygen in the prana starts to ignite, and it's coming out of the top of his head, and he's pulling in the oxygen from far, near and far, and it's blurting out the top of his head as fire. So all of the celestial beings are like, wow, what is going on? So they all come to see, who's this guy? What's going on? In fact, it's so amazing that even Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva come to check it out. Standing on one leg, three-less Atri became aware that the three masters had simultaneously made a rare appearance. So it's rare, quite rare, to have any darshan of Vishnu, Brahma, or Shiva. But it's kind of relatively often that you get one at a time. Sometimes both, two at a time, but very rare you get three at a time. So it was a very rare appearance that simultaneously they came. So he stopped doing his meditation. He arose from his meditation and saw the three leaders of the wise divinities. One was seated on a bull, another on a swan, and a third on an eagle. Can you figure out who's who? Shiva's on the bull, Vishnu's on the eagle, and Brahma's on the swan. They came on their steeds. He recognized them and offered respect by folding his hands as a gesture of worship, and bowed to the ground fully like a rod. I don't know how many cultures you see this in, but in Indian culture, in Japan, they make a big deal, excuse me, about your manners and when you bow. So they make a big deal that you should bow from your lower back and not just from your top. If you bow from your top, it's like very casual bow. But if you really want to show respect, you bow from your lower back. But in India, and in Japan also, you'll see this in really extreme circumstances when they want to show respect or apologize. They'll put their head all the way on the ground. But in India, that's kind of very typical, especially in spiritual circles. But there's an even more extreme way of bowing, which is you put your whole body flat on the ground. And that's called dandavat, means like a stick. So that's what Atri did. He saw that Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva came to him. After he's doing his meditation, may I have a child who's as great as the master of everything. Then the three masters come in front of him. And he's like, wow, I better stop. I can't ignore them. So he stops doing what he's doing, and he puts his hands like this, and then he goes flat down on the ground. They gazed upon him compassionately with smiling faces expressing deep satisfaction. Their brilliance was so dazzling that the scholar had to close his eyes. He fixed his concentration upon them, folded his hands, and began to glorify them with a sweet voice, for they are worshipped by everyone. So let's see what he says. He says, to cyclically bring forth, maintain, and return the universe from the raw qualities of Maya. You distinguish yourself in these three forms: wise Brahma, all-pervading Vishnu, and Shiva, the mountain lord. Okay, so he's explaining who they are, what they do. They cyclically take the universe out of its potential state, keep it in its manifest state, put it back into its potential state. The one taking it out and giving it shapes and forms is Brahma. The one keeping it solid and real is Vishnu. And the one dismantling it and putting it back into its potential state is Shiva. I bow to you three who have come in response to my pleas. I am bowed to you three who have come in response to my pleas. But I did not call to three persons for the sake of my future children. I called to one, all attractive and blessed being, who has many valuable potencies. So he's a little bit actually dissatisfied with the result of his yoga. He wasn't calling to three people. He wasn't asking. He didn't have a triplicity in his mind. He was standing on one leg thinking of one being. But he got three beings come to him. Yes. I call to the one attractive, all attractive, blessed being who has many valuable potencies. So why have three of you come here? This is a very interesting question. Three beings came in response to his concentration on one being. So why have three of you come here from your places beyond the thoughts of the embodied? Please favor me by explaining and relieving me of this great confusion. He's confused. Why are there three gods standing in front of me when I appeal to one? Hearing this, the three leaders of the wise divinities happily replied to the sages with gentle voices. Whatever you decide to do cannot be thwarted, learned one. Your ambitions are true and fulfilled. This is an interesting thing to say, and it's a very interesting concept. When a person is very realized and enlightened, they're in contact with reality. So their thoughts, emotions, desires, etc., are always in contact with realness. So they come true. So he's saying, whatever you want, you'll get. They're telling you, your thoughts, your desires, they can't be thwarted because you're in contact with reality. So what they're saying is, you prayed to one, you got one. Your desire hasn't been messed up. You didn't get what you didn't pray for. There's three of us standing in front of you, and you prayed to one, and you think something went wrong, but nothing went wrong. Whatever you decide to do can't be thwarted, learned one. Your ambitions are true and fulfilled. We three certainly are the one divinity that you meditated upon. Dear, our fragments will become famous throughout the world as your three children, making you famous as well. Good fortune unto you. Padram te. After granting the fulfillment of his wish, the masters of the gods were fully honored by the husband and wife who watched as they departed. So that's the end of that story. It's very, 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 very interesting tale, and it gives you some important anecdote about Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. There are three. Actually, didn't Atri say this? To cyclically bring forth, maintain, and return the universe from the raw qualities of matter. You distinguish yourself in these three forms. So he himself seemed to have known this. It's one entity being manifest in these three forms to perform these three different tasks. Any questions? I thought we will stop reading there. Next, we're going to hear about the third daughter, Shraddha. Trust and acceptance. Shraddha, trust, and Angira, acceptance. Very interesting. And the next one is so interesting because it has to do with the moon. Phases of the moon, waxing, waning. All right, any questions about Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, any of that? Atri, Atreya. Yes, that's very interesting. Bardo says it's the recurring theme of just diffraction or splitting of the ray of consciousness into separate forms. Is it splitting the ray of consciousness into separate forms, or is consciousness naturally multifaceted? Please ask yourself that. When you say it's splitting the ray of consciousness into many forms, it sounds like some kind of imposition into consciousness, or something that happens at a certain point in time, or isn't perhaps necessary, or isn't perhaps natural. So careful with your wording. Maybe consciousness by its nature is multifaceted and therefore has so many different aspects from which it can be seen, and therefore it can be seen as so many different forms. Miss Vinay, when it comes to the name of the all attractive, what is the most accurate name for the one being form? Krishna is, or any name which describes the essence of what the being is doing, which is enjoying pleasure. Krishna, Govinda, Madhusudan, there's so many names. But Krishna is the one that's most like famous. Right. Any other questions? Kind of cool section, right? No. Okay, guys. Let me just type this in so it's funny. All right. Yeah, we'll call it a day. Let's just see what. Let me just address what Karen just said. Maybe we think of the one ray due to monistic thinking, whereas the teachings aren't monistic. The teachings are a mind-boggling marriage of plurality and monism, because what it's saying is the one real substance is multifaceted. So you have monism because there's one true real substance, but you have plurality or pluralism because this one real substance has many facets to it. And you don't have duality because there's not two real substances or two substances. There's one real substance, but it's multifaceted. So that's why this comprehension of Vedic philosophy is called Vishishta Dvait, which is a pure comprehension of monism, or it's called Dvaita Dvait, which is a singularity which is not without multiplicity, or it's called Bheda Bhed, which means a distinction which is not from two distinct entities. All right, guys, we'll end it there and see you tomorrow to hear about Shraddha and Angira. We'll see what happens. That's really cool. Those moons are really cool, Heidi.